Welcome, welcome. This is a short class on the reflective power of relationships. So, how we can use water medicine to understand our relationships more deeply, to gain more insight about how we can possibly shift and change them and understand them on that deeper level. My name is Sofia, and I'm the director of Elemental Empress Medicine. I support people in connecting and understanding the elements on a deeper level to heal their own body and to manifest around them what they wish to see in their lives. And these elements, fire, air, earth, and water, they're very simple, grounded truths of our reality, our internal reality, and our external reality. And they're powerful teachers in a sense that we can all relate to them in our own way. They meet us where we are and they guide us from there on multiple very interesting routes of exploration of energy in life. And this is a specific aspect. The water element covers many things, which we'll touch on some of in here, but this is a specific aspect of how relationships can be reflective. So welcome. Today we're going to cover in this class, how does the water element connect with the emotional body? How is that related? And in what ways does this help us with relationships? So it's one thing being aware of the internal world, how our emotions are flowing, what's arising. And then it's another thing, how is this actually come out into the external? How does it shift and change our relationships? And with that, as we go through this and afterwards as you're integrating what's shared, spending time with water, drinking water, like that is cleansing, and it opens the teachings for yourself as well. So if you're finding that you're feeling lost or confused with how your relationships are reflecting things back at you, it's a great sign to connect more with the water that you're drinking, having some more herbal teas, eating hydrating foods, and reducing salt intake and diuretics, things like that. So coming into better relationship with the water element is a way of receiving these teachings yourself and these illuminations within your life. The emotional body is within the water element, and we have the sacral chakra at the area in our abdomen. Our intuition resides here. It's for the womb space, the intestines, this area of the body. This is where we can deeply connect with our water and how our water is feeling. And so your emotions are reflected all around you. So the first step is to be able to be present, to bring awareness to your own emotions. So if you are unaware of your emotional body, what kind of energies, so emotion is energy in motion. So if you're unaware of the energies that are moving around your being, then it's very hard to see the reflection in your relationships because you're not aware in your own self. So then, of course, the reflection is going to be confusing and disorientating because the center point is within your being. So this is the first step. That's really great and simple. Taking deep breaths into the body, that opens up our receptivity to water, because when we breathe, we expand the lungs, and the lungs are what cleanse and take toxins out of the blood, which is the flow of water through the body. So we're literally opening ourselves to our emotional body. So this is why people will lose weight from doing things like breath work. Like they're literally losing water weight because they're starting to actually cleanse their emotional body through the breath. So I'll dive more into that in another video about how we can use air medicine to cleanse the emotional body. But that's the first step, to just take some deep breaths, and then you can start to see how your emotions are flowing, see what you're feeling today. And then if someone does come and reflect something back at you that's good or a bit uncomfortable, then you know where the origin is within yourself. So water is clear when still. This idea of water being clear when it's still, if we think about that in nature, this is a nice way to start understanding your emotional body on a deeper level, is to observe how water is in nature. So it has all these different states. It can be flowing, it can be stagnant, it can be ice, and just observing that and then seeing, because when you observe that more, if you then write about your emotions, you'll notice you start to use those analogies to describe your water, your emotional body, and it gives you more of a deeper symbolic vocabulary of your emotional body. And this is hugely helpful with relationships. With that, when we are able to bring water into stillness, and this is why people emphasize things like meditation, shavasana at the end of a yoga practice, these are all points in which everything comes to stillness. And you can see in water, the sediment goes down to the bottom, and we can see clarity in the water. If there's constant motion all the time, then the water is murky, and it's hard to tell what's coming from where, how we're actually feeling. And in a deeper sense, it's hard to connect with our true essence, our soul voice, our internal guidance system, because the sediment in the water could be like opinions from other people, harmful memories, trauma memories from the past. Like, these sediments can be all kinds of energies influencing and coming in. So it's really helpful to let those things settle so that we don't identify with them. We can take a breath, let them settle, and come back to our true self, come back to our power as well, because the clarity is like your awareness, your fire. Your fire is your power. So when the water is still and clear, you can use your awareness to see what's going on, and this is a very empowering experience. So when we start to flow with our emotional body, it's easier to see what's manifesting. If we stay stagnant, like we don't exercise, we don't talk about our emotions, we don't share with our partner like how we're feeling, or we don't share with a friend what's going on for us in work, this is when we start to get really disorientated with the emotional body. And it's hard to see that the reflection in relationships, because there's a lot of unconscious behavior and patterns going on. And this is a little bit like the shadow aspect of the water element, is that it represents like the darkness in a sense, not darkness as in bad, but darkness as an unconscious. So it's that feminine energy is also represented by water. So if we look at like the womb space, it's like a void of darkness, and that's like the womb is water as well. And so within that, there isn't awareness, and that's okay. I mean, that's where a lot of life and ideas and beauty comes from, intuition comes from. And with that, if we want to be able to evolve with our relationships, we have to be able to have a process that brings the emotions to light, so that we can consciously make choices about how to flow with our life. And so this, I see, for me, I manifest this as flow writing. So for writing, it's like writing down what's going on for me internally that I can't see, and I write in a black pen on a white page. And so this is symbolic of that darkness, those emotions, things in my unconscious mind coming into the light, the white paper, the light of my conscious mind, the light of my awareness. And from that space of being aware, I can make conscious decisions. And so with that flow and reflect, when you take time to bring your emotions up, whether this be with a counselor, with a journal, or like in meditation, just sitting by yourself in nature, you allow them to arise, and then you get to decide, who you share what with in your relationships. Because, for example, like when I channel writing, and I just write maybe 4 pages, there's one paragraph that I might mention to a friend because it's related to something we had spoken about. There's some of it that I could share with my partner because that's, helpful for our relationship, or just informative and interesting. So not everything needs to be shared, but it does happen that if we don't have that time to reflect and write, things like that, we just share unconsciously as well. Like we just share everything. And this can be heavy for relationships because, not everyone is there to receive everything from you, and you're not there to receive everything from them. So it can feel like, a bit weighted and a bit like we feel unseen and unheard by the people in our lives because we're not seeing and hearing ourselves first and foremost. So as you shift your emotional state, your surrounding relationships change. Bring awareness to the last 24 hours of your life to experiment with this idea. Sometimes when taking on these kinds of new concepts and new ideas, it's easier to look at the past than it is the present, or to continue that awareness through the future. Because it's kind of like you're proving it to yourself, or like you're experimenting to see if it is true for you. And I love to say this, like, not to take my word for things, not to take my, my understanding or like this understanding of the water element like as a given. Just like it's best to experiment with it and see what feels true and what feels right for you. So in the last 24 hours, looking at your emotions, tracking how you were feeling over the last day and breathing that in and noticing, okay, like in the morning I woke up and I felt like pretty well rested. And then, I saw an email on my phone that changed my plans for next month. And that made me feel this. And then I walked into a coffee shop and then the barista like reflected this at me. And then I had a meeting with a friend and then my emotional state in that scenario, like how is that reflected back at me in those different times of the day. And what this does is this brings the power back to you. So the external is a mirror. When we feel like the emotional body, we're just flowing with it completely, this is like we're going very far into the water element. And this can be indicative of being like an empath and just someone who really resonates with water. It's all good. One of the things to look out for, a little bit of a shadow aspect of that way of being, when over surrendering to it, we can get lost in the mirror. We can get lost in relationships, lost in emotions, and not find our way back home, back to our center. And so we need to be in our center, grounded in ourselves, to see that people are a reflection of us. And from that, we can regain control of ourselves and the manifestation of our reality. When we come back into our being, we then can start asking ourselves questions like, okay, when I meditated for 15 minutes before I had dinner with my partner, this is the reflection that I saw. When I walked straight in the door from work, frazzled and filled with the worries of the day, and I had dinner with my partner, this was the reflection that I saw. So the point of control then comes all the way back to you. It grounds within you solidly that your actions and your maintenance and care for your physical and emotional, mental, spiritual body, all of these, caring for all aspects of self, this changes the reflection because they're the same person. Like we can't control other people and we can't control other people's behavior. And that's getting lost in the mirror. If you're feeling like, I want my partner to change, I want this person in the work to just like get a grip or whatever the case may be, this is going into the, like you're getting lost in the mirror. So coming back to yourself and experimenting so much with this is the most important point of experimentation of like, when you change your behavior, how does the reflection change? And this is really simple stuff. This is not high complexity. This is like, if you exercise in the morning, you have an exercise regime, how does your day flow? Like if you do meditation to like check in at lunchtime, how does your day flow? So just noticing how your behavior alters the reflection in your relationships and alters your day to see how that goes for you. And so, as I mentioned there in the beginning, connecting with water is so beautiful for this journey. So when I breathe into one of these concepts, I go so deep into it, and I like really want to understand it to the depths of it because I'm a water person. So water people tend to want to understand things to the very depth because water is very deep. So if you are a deep diver, then connecting with water is a wonderful way to flow with this journey, like taking it, if you have the desire to hold space for this for a week or a month, is so great because when you do it for a month, it's the moon cycle, which is also related to water. So noticing when the new moon is there, when the full moon is there, and noticing how, if you're a female as well, like how your menstrual cycles is showing itself, like the different phases within the cycle. I have another video on that as well, like the different cycle phases and how that can support women with embodying the different energies that flow through them. So connecting with water in this broader sense, by using the states and characteristics of water, you can gain a deeper understanding of how your emotional body is manifesting. So today I'm feeling in a flow state, maybe this afternoon I'm feeling kind of icy, I'm feeling kind of cold. And feeling stagnant, or like specifying it to a part of your body as well. You can Notice maybe you have swelling in your feet. That's edema, that building up of water within the feet. Noticing how that feels, that's stagnation. Or leaky gut syndrome as well, like that sense of not having great boundaries with people and then suffering in your digestive abilities to assimilate your food because there's this leaky boundary between you and other people, and that's causing this like murky, stagnant water. So connecting with these different states and ways in which water can manifest in your external reality. And you can take this another level deeper and see the reflection of the water around you as a message about your emotional body. So for example, if you're having like leaks in your house, that's like an emotional overwhelm. You have a lot of emotions to work with and they're affecting your home space, your feeling of safety within your home. If your pipes are freezing, that's it, like feeling icy cold, not wanting things to flow and feeling very like iced off from the flow of emotion of your emotional body and so forth. And even externally, if you have a stagnant pool in your garden, if you have a stagnant pond, if you have a running stream, you have a waterfall, like just noticing how water is reflected around you. And this will also teach you a lot about your emotional body, the emotional body of your family, like whoever's living with you, the emotional body of the area, like the town that you're in, possibly the country if you're in a more desert environment, if you're in a more like rainforest environment. So just there's you in this emotional body, and sometimes it's helpful to expand out, to like zoom out to see the larger picture. And this can make it, depending on who you are, this can make it more enjoyable and more of an exploration of self, like more of a curiosity thing. So your power resides in self-reflection. Yeah, so this is coming back home, self-reflection. So there's that reflection of other people. But if we're constantly trying to get other people to understand, we're trying to like, say you did that or you did this, you need to change. This is like pointing, so it's just like really the power is when you start like going, oh, okay, this is how my water's feeling in my body. This is how I'm seeing water in my reality. And this is how my emotions are coming out on paper. This is much more powerful than like pointing out externally to people around you. So how does this support with your relationships? And it essentially comes back, I've mentioned pretty much there before, that it all comes back to your energy. You are so powerful in your relationships, like you are the point of power. And experimenting with this can be so much fun and so relieving. If you are the kind of person that's been feeling at the mercy of other people's behavior, emotions, energy, like those empathic, highly sensitive people, like hello there, my tribe. So yeah, those people, like it can be overwhelming. It's just like, oh, I have to feel all these things and I feel helpless and out of control. And that's okay. The water element can really support you with this one. And the earth element as well. So the earth element is great for those boundaries. So the boundaries being time, discipline, like schedules, that's all earth medicine to just support you in having good boundaries. It's also the word no, saying no to people. So if someone's energy is just not positive for you, and you can say no, you can say like, no, I don't want that in my space right now. And you can have time and discipline to make space for yourself to self-reflect. So for 1 hour a day at 3 p.m., I take out my journal, I put on some nice music, I make a cup of tea, and I flow write my emotions to connect with myself. Like I get up at 8 a.m., a bit, or 7 a.m., a little bit earlier, to go for a walk and to listen to some music to get my body moving and to see where my emotional body's at. And that's what I do for myself. So that's kind of earth medicine and how it can support water medicine. And you can imagine this like banks to a river. So if there's no banks, if there's no earth medicine involved in your existence or your life, it's like you become a swamp. The water is just like really swampy. And it just also can flood, it can flood into people's homes. It gets like into places that it shouldn't be because it's just like merging with everything. And this is kind of how we can be with relationships. It's like we go into spaces where we're not really invited because we have poor boundaries. So we're overstepping other people's boundaries because like we're not, that's not a reflection that we're seeing. We're not seeing the reflection of having good boundaries because we don't have good boundaries. So then there's this infiltration of your energy, and other people can get frustrated with that. That can cause like rifts and arguments. So that's one manifestation of the water, the emotions of your being. And the other manifestation with earth medicine is like banks to a river. So the banks are there, the water still like is present, but it flows. Like it flows through, it filtrates itself, it aerates, it mineralizes itself. It's like this beautiful creation of the universe, of like a natural filtration system of our source of water. It's such a magical process. And so those banks are highly important with that, to have those, like for waterfalls, to have that rock drop, in the pool at the bottom, those earthy aspects to hold this like re-energizing of the water, and then to have that flow. So for us, what that translates into, to have that flowing, energizing, like beautiful water, is to have those boundaries, like to say no sometimes, to allocate time to self-reflection, to self-care, and allocate time to cleansing rituals like baths with Epsom salts, things like that, and times away to support. And then again, with work, if you're an entrepreneur, you're setting your own schedule, again, just ensuring that you have enough time to self-reflect, to come back to yourself, to come to stillness, things like that. So it all starts with your energy, and when you start to do that, you start to see it from an internal space. Your relationships can change in whatever way you want them to. If you want them to be more romantic with a partner, diving into like your sensuality within yourself and how you feel about your sensuality, and coming back to a point of change that you can make within yourself. So if you're like, oh, I'm not feeling that a lot of people are attracted to me, in intimacy, it can be then, okay, well, what can I do? Okay, if I worked out, if I did an exercise regime, I got into yoga, or I, explored my sensuality by myself, then that would make me feel more attractive. That would make me feel more open to that occurring in my life. So that's where to start, rather than going external and searching for someone, bringing them in, and that whole thing. It's much more empowering to stay within ourselves and then notice how the world shifts around us, and keep coming back to self. And the same for things like being seen and heard by relationships. Again, coming back to self and saying like, well, am I seeing myself clearly? Am I hearing myself clearly? Am I valuing myself? Am I respecting myself? And when you come to respect yourself, there's two things that will happen. Like either that person will start to respect you, and like if they're highly critical of you now, it's like a reflection that you're highly critical of yourself. So you start to be nicer to yourself, you start to value yourself and really see the beauty within you. They'll either just stop seeing that reflection in you, they won't mention it anymore, and they'll start to see the light. Or, if that doesn't resonate with them, if that's not part of their journey, they'll like spontaneously leave your existence, like your reality. So because that's not part of their path, that's not what they're in your orbit to do, or that's not, because we can't expect people to change. That's part of it. So then they will fall away. In a sense, like you might move country, they might move to another office. It's really wild to see how the universe like organizes these things and sets things up. So that's nothing for you to worry about. That's not your job at all. It's all about just being present here, making your body a great place to be, and making your mind a beautiful place to be, and connecting in with the soul, and everything else will align perfectly for you. So steps for healing, to summarize some of what was shared here. So we have self-care first and foremost. That comes back and replenishes us. And then we have the stillness, to let everything settle, just like letting it all go, letting everything just be as it is. Because if we're trying to reflect while we're still in motion, there's still so much going on. It's going to be murky and harder and confusing. So self-care to bring us into that yin energy, that relaxation time. Then we manifest stillness from that, because we've cooled down our fire a little bit. We're okay to be relaxed, and then we can be more open from that space. So this is very feminine work, very feminine energy, to take the time to self-care, to come into stillness, and then to be open. These are strongly feminine energies. And lastly, then we have compassionate communication. So for compassionate communication, then it comes back to you into your language with yourself. So if it's hard to compliment people or share opinions with others, that's a sign that there's a lack of self love and a lack of recognition for self and acceptance of self. So coming back to that first and managing that within your own orbit, within your own mind space. And then when you do bring your communication out, then when you have a better dialogue internally, you'll notice your conversations will shift and change and will feel better for you. And secondly, then with that, with the compassionate communication, it is also about boundaries and earth medicine. So words are earth medicine too, like I was mentioning there with saying no. There are other aspects to which we set boundaries with people. So if we're lost in the mirror and we're communicating with people, it gives them an invitation to come into our emotional body. And an simple example of this is speaking from the first person or not. So when I share something with someone that's vulnerable, like if I had an idea for a business and it's new in my mind, and I say, oh, when you think of a new idea for starting up a business and like you get really excited about it, but you're not really sure how it's going to work out or where to begin, but this is my idea and da 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 da. So that's inviting the other person's energy in because you've reflected on them. You've said you. So it's like, okay, now they're engaged because they're putting their understanding of how the world works, if the idea is going to be good enough. You're going to pull all that energy out of them and into you. And this is quite a permeable dynamic and quite a vulnerable one because like you don't know what they're going to say. They could have failed horribly in business. They could have terrible advice. It's just not relevant to your highest good or your highest potential. They may not see your light. They may only see that you're incompetent, and then they'll reflect that back at you, and you have no control over it. Then it's just like very much absorbed and becomes part of your water, and then can bog you down, can make you feel terrible about this idea that could potentially actually be very good. And the alternative to saying that is like, oh, well, I got an idea the other day about a business that I feel really good about. I feel very passionate about it, and I feel there's a good audience for it. And so this is a little bit about the idea that's flowing through me at this time. And like share a bit about the idea. And so from that, it's like there's obviously it's a conversation. They're fully welcome, and there's space for them to share advice, their opinions, their life experiences. But you can see, if you can feel that energy, it's like, yes, they are sharing that, but they're sharing that in their bubble. And you are very solidly within your bubble. Like you have those nice earthy boundaries. So your emotions in that context are not vulnerable to the impurities of what they may share with you. So that's a little bit about compassionate communication and how that can help. I hope this class was helpful for you. I love this topic. If you have any questions, do feel free to leave them in the comments. And you can always send them on as well to heal@elementalempressmedicine.com. There is an Instagram account there and a webpage. On the webpage, there's a great blog that has the blog posts segregated into the different elements and like how the elements interact. So how we can use the different medicine from fire, air, earth, and water. If you're curious about how that works, how that translates into life, similarly like this topic of water translates into relationships, do check out that blog, and yeah, feel free to get in touch if you have any personal questions. Have a wonderful day.